Now for bloom, it's pretty straightforward. All we have to do is create some new properties here in the weapon components. So U property, blueprint, read only, category, recoil. And this is going to be bloom step. And let's go with 0.5f for now. And then another float, current bloom, start at 0. And then another U property. And this should be, oh, this should be edit anywhere. Oh, we wanna, yeah, so use the U property for the current bloom because we will use this current bloom later on. As for this one, we want ADS bloom modifier, start with 0.2f, and another one, and this one is a float, bloom recovery interp speed, and this is 20. And that's the only property that we need, and we can just go to fire, and here it all depends on your implementation. In my implementation, initially I have spread here, which is equal to 0, and I also have the start vector and forward vector, which will later on being used to pick a random direction for my hit scan bullet, right? So basically you start at some start vector and then you add to that start vector some resulting vector, which is just the initial random direction that was generated multiplied by the range, right? And so all we have to do, at least in my implementation, all I have to do is just influence this random direction. And initially, this random direction would always be equal to 0. The reason being, I hard-coded this to 0. But if we want to add bloom, all we have to do is just modify the spread so that generating this random unit vector will result in some interesting bloom depending on our bloom value, right? So all we have to do here is just start vector and then forward vector, and here we can delete the spread. So here we can have so current bloom is equal to fmath clamp current bloom plus bloom step. So in each shot we want to add the current bloom value with the bloom step that we determined, right? And different weapon would probably have different bloom step value. And so here we have all right, so that's the value, and then we want to clamp it between 0 and the max bloom value. Max bloom. Wait, I think I don't have that. Okay, so add one more variable, which is max bloom. Float. Why is it not here? I'm not sure. Okay, so float max bloom, and let's set this to maybe 10. All right. And after that, we have max bloom So that's the new current bloom, which is being updated after every fire, after every shot. And then we can just influence the spread here. So float spread is equal to current bloom. And then create a new variable, bloom modifier is equal to fmath lerp ads bloom modifier ads alpha. This one is a little bit difficult to explain, but basically in my game I want this bloom to be also influenced by my aim down sight state. And what this does, and what this ADS alpha does, is it tells the weapon whether or not I'm currently aiming down sight. So if ADS alpha is 0, that means I'm hip firing. I'm not holding down the ADS button. But if ADS alpha is 1, that means I'm fully aiming down sight. And we're just lerping between this between 1 to the ADS bloom modifier. And as we have seen, we've initialized the ADS bloom modifier to point to F, which means if we're aiming down sight, we want our bloom to be more constrained, to be less influential, right? We want when we are aiming down sight, we want the bloom to be less, to be more controlled, if that makes sense. Right, so that's the bloom modifier, and then we can just influence the spread here to spread times bloom modifier, and that's all we have to do. Next thing you want to do is, of course, in every tick we want to reset the current bloom. To be precise, we want to interpolate it back to 0, right? Because if we don't shoot, we want to recover the bloom value so that it's being controlled again. So in the tick function, here we can just add the bloom value somewhere around here. So just if current bloom is greater than 0, then just interpolate it back to 0. And as always, we want to use consistent interpolation speed, so we use this trick, f divided delta time, and then it's going to be divided by the bloom recovery interpolation speed, which you can tweak from the editor directly, because we've tagged it with U property. And then we interpolate this current bloom back to 0, f interp constant, because I feel like it looks much better and it makes more sense. So we use constant interpolation to 0, delta time, and interp speed. And that's all we have to do. And now you will see that when you shoot for the first time, it's pretty accurate, right? See where the bullet decal lands relative to the reticle? It's pretty accurate. But the longer we spread the more sporadic it gets. So that is what blooms are. So that's what blooms are. And if you're wondering, yes, we can definitely influence the way that the reticle looks, just like any other modern shooter game. Okay, so basically you just open your HUD widget blueprint where your reticle is implemented. And here I'm using the reticle by Art of Sith here, which is called WBP reticle type B. And I can just edit that reticle, and within the graph I can edit, or I think it's not here, it's actually in the base or the parent blueprint. and it should be here, right? So I've set this up, and basically what I want is I want the reticle to reflect my current bloom value, and so we can just get this the current weapon and current bloom, and we also want to get the maximum bloom, right? And we can just add this to this equation. So the default value is 0 plus a over b, and that is the additional bloom added by each fire, right? And we can just add this to my input scale, and this will influence my my radical spread, right? And of course, depending on your widget blueprint, you might want a different implementation, but generally this is how you use it. You use a current bloom divided by the maximum amount of bloom, and that will influence the scale of your reticle, or the maybe like the distance or anything like that. And we can see this. So if I have the weapon and I shoot, the reticle will reflect my bloom. So if it's not back to the original position, that it's not recovered or reset back to 0 yet. Yeah, that's just how it is. And when we aim down sight, the bloom will still exist, but it would be less influential, but it's still definitely there. It's starting to get sporadic. But yeah, that is basically what bloom is. And again, you have to be extra careful implementing bloom, because the last thing that your player wants is their when they expect that their shot should land but isn't because of the bloom. That can get very frustrating. So you have to be very careful in tweaking the values and balance them accordingly.